Aloha, I'm Jack Dugan with Pacific Media Group in Maui now. Today we have Maui County Mayor Mike Victorino addressing some of the pressing issues currently facing Maui County. Aloha, Mayor. Thank you for joining us today. Friends, we have Mayor Victorino here, who's been gracious enough to give us some of his time to answer some difficult questions regarding Maui County. First of all, let's talk about the current status of Maui County. It's been more than a year since this pandemic began, affecting our lives in so many different ways. We've had great milestones achieved, and we've also had significant setbacks. In your opinion, what do you feel are the greatest challenges affecting Maui County today?
Thank you for that question, and aloha to everyone. Let me start by saying I think our biggest challenge right now is this new Delta variant and the Delta Plus. I think this has caused a lot of anxiety. Our case counts have been the highest ever. And if you go back and look at all our history over the last 16 months, we've never had these kinds of numbers per day for the state and for Maui, the Big Island, and even Kauai. All the counties have seen a major uptick in numbers. The vaccination we had all hoped that would really curb the spread. Unfortunately, by the numbers who have not taken the vaccine and the breakthrough cases, it has held numbers higher than we ever expected. What we're working on very diligently now is to say, we as Maui County will work together to make what we can and make the best of it. The concern again also is the use of our hospital and our hospital staff, our medical facilities and our staffs throughout the county and throughout the state. They're being taxed. They've been doing this for 16 straight months, and it's really being taxed on them. And so we're praying that this variant will slow down, that we will level it off, and hopefully over the next few weeks get to be where we need to be and that we won't overload our hospitals.
Thank you. Really appreciate that input. Moving on to the next subject here, we're going to talk about tourism and resource management. So obviously, tourism has returned, you could say, in full effect back to Maui County in recent months. Are there any specific areas the county is involved in related to helping manage Maui County's resources? For example, transportation, traffic, water shortages?
Well, let's start with, first of all, none of us as mayors and as leaders expected this recovery to be so quick. And it took a lot of us a little off guard. And so we've had to make adjustments accordingly. First of all, let's talk about transportation. We have less vehicles as our rental car fleet has been reduced quite substantially after the pandemic has started. You know, the sea of cars that used to circle the airport, about a good third to a half of those vehicles were sent back or sold off. And as you're well aware of, to buy a new car now is very, very difficult. So fleets are very small. So that's also inhibited the number of rentals that are going out and the expense of that rental. You know, average is $150 to $250 a day. That's an average. You know, they go higher depending on the type of car and the size. The second part is transportation that we utilize as far as bus transportation. And we have emphasized the fact that multimodal transportation, not only for our residents, but for our visitors, is really a unique way and saves our roadways, gas emissions, and other areas where we've been very concerned with. Our hotels, our resorts are pretty much at capacity right now. Many of them are at 75, 80% of occupancy, but they will not open other rooms because they don't have the labor force to manage the properties to give them the proper experience. So that's another challenge we face. Our restaurants are at capacity many times. If you've been to a restaurant, first of all, you can't get a reservation for months down the road. And many restaurants, when you go there, you got a long line to wait to get in, even with sometimes a reservation. So our food services have been really challenged. And so our residents have taken a kind of like a back door to it. They're kind of upset that they cannot get into their favorite restaurants because of all the visitors that are here and because of the lack of service, because of employees not being able or not wanting to return or not being here to return. Many of we have a good number of what we call seasonal workers that come here. And these people would serve for 6 months or 5 months, and live here, enjoy the surfing, enjoy the windsurfing, whatever it might be, and then go back home. But when the pandemic hit, many of them left and they haven't come back. So that's made the situation with our labor force even greater. And then finally, our environment and taxing our beaches. Our residents got used to during the downturn when we had nobody around, very few visitors, of having all our beaches to ourselves like we used to as kids. And so that's made it very difficult in sharing what we have and making sure that everybody is fairly treated. And so for us right now, we're looking at paid parking, managing our visitors in certain areas, looking to make sure that we have the availability for our residents, increasing residents' accessibility with parking, free parking, and our visitors paying for parking. That way we can reduce the number of cars that go into different parking lots. There's a number of programs that we're working on, destinations like Wainapa Napa, which we have a reservation system put in place, which the state and I developed, and I think it's a good system. And we're now looking at Iao and other places where we can do that and have where a more controllable visitor industry and how we can manage traffic, how we can manage better our utilization of our parks and beaches. These are things that right now are all being worked on or are being implemented, and we're hoping that this will preserve our resources, keep Maui the beautiful place we all grew up with, and most importantly, making sure that when the visitor come, they will have a great stay. You know, their experience will be a good one, so they'll want to come back again.
Thanks for all that, Mayor. You noted specifically about the plan that's in place. It sounds like at least being worked on about parking. And if I understood you correctly, where perhaps visitors would pay for parking and residents might be able to have free parking to help just ensure that local residents have access to their beaches and are able to go when they would like to be able to go.
We're taking the page out of what Hana Bay does in Honolulu, in Oahu, and where, you know, they are paid parking and paid entrance. And now the residents are now being able to use so many slots as free parking and free entry. And so we want to make sure our residents always have accessibility to our beaches and our beach parks. Our visitors will be here for a few days or a week or two, and they'll have the ability to enjoy it. But by putting that fee on it, it helps them offset some of the expenses that we have to go through to maintain it, to enhance it, to repair and all of that. So it's very important that, to maintain our quality of life and the beauty of our resources and protecting it, it costs money. And so with global warming and other issues that are occurring around us, we need to keep building and trying to enhance and protect what we have, because once we lose it, we don't get it back.
Right. Thanks for all that. I appreciate the clarification. Now, potentially tying this into some of the issues related to East Maui, right? And Hana, we're all aware as residents here in Maui County, some of the big issues related to traffic there, over tourism, even many would say. Are there any plans, anything that you see in the works, or maybe that have already been started to be implemented, resolving some of those issues?
What we're trying to do with Hana is a couple of things. We'd like to have an area where visitors could park their vehicles, or buses could take visitors or pick up visitors and take them into small transit buses into Hana instead of the number of cars that are going in. So that will reduce the stress on our roadways, especially for our visitors. Our residents know their way in and out, but it's the visitors who get excited and stop at falls and stop at places they're not supposed to stop at, parking where they're not supposed to park, impeding traffic. And it's become a challenge. And so what we hope to do right now is have a system where when what we're doing at Wainapa Napa, we'll be able to do with Kenai, we may be able to do with Wailua, all along the Hana drive, have where we have reservations. So you come in at a certain time, get on a bus, go in, or even drive your vehicle in at a certain time and leave the area by a certain time. So we never tax the amount of facilities as well as the roadway itself. So Wainapa Napa was really a test or pilot, and it's worked real well. So now we're moving ahead to see if we can do the rest of the destinations in Hana, so we have more of a coordinated effort instead of everybody going in helter-skelter.
Thank you for all that, Mayor. Okay, so next topic we wanted to get into here is certainly a difficult one and really an unusual dynamic created by the pandemic, and that's employment, right? We recall, when the pandemic first began, significant unemployment issues, just a lot of concern from the employees, being let go or laid off, and now we have a dynamic where there's a lot of jobs available, but limited supply of workers. How do you see the issue, and are there any things that the county, on your level, and the county level, is doing to try to alleviate some of these issues going on?
Well, thank you again for that question. Our workforce development group has been integral in working with the University of Hawaii, Maui College, and developing training programs for the new jobs, as well as retooling some of the jobs that are out there, because even maids, housemen, all our service industry has changed quite drastically in the protocol, safety approach, and the cleanliness and sanitation that is needed with COVID-19. So with those issues being looked upon, we need to develop a different workforce. Also, as we develop our medical and wellness programs, which I believe will be a new dynamics for this community, we need to get them ready, our residents, our youngsters who are graduating, preparing them for those jobs so that they're readily available and not have to always bring in outsiders to help us. I think, once in a while it's not a bad idea, but we want to make sure our residents have a living wage, that they're able to feel comfortable and feel that there's a self-worth as far as what they're doing as a job is concerned. But employment is based upon another issue, which is housing, whether it's rental or obtainable housing. We need to make sure we continue to build. One of the things the pandemic has done is slow down that, along with the years of wrangling by a lot of people as far as what is affordable and what is obtainable, rentals, and all of this. It's made it very, very difficult. We put a plan with the help of Jeff Gelbright and others that with what we're wanting to do, and I think we'll be able to move on some housing over the next 6 to 9 months, actually moving dirt, getting things ready so we can start building. Because if you don't have a decent place to live in and feel that you can either own it or rent it at a fair price, you're not going to want to stay here. And that's made it very difficult. I think this pandemic has taught us one thing. We are dependent on each other. We are a community, an island community, and that our island community is our home. We're not just a destination, but we're a home to our people. And we need to make sure that our indigenous people, as well as those who live here, are taken care of, and housing is one of the basic needs. Cost of living has been very high here. That's why livable wages become very important. Even our agriculture, our new agriculture, is more technology-based and really is moving into giving better wages than they used to get at the old plantation. So there's many dynamics that we're in right now, moving ahead, being able to produce enough food to self-sustain ourselves, and not have to bring in 85% of all our necessary food. Let's get to a point where we only have to doing 20% or 25%, and where the rest of it is grown here. I had just had lunch today at a friend's house. Everything we ate was all grown here in Maui, Big Island, and Kauai. All of the food, all of the vegetables, the chickens, everything we ate was all grown in the islands. And I think you enjoy the food even more because it has a different ambience, knowing you've been a part of it instead of somebody shipping it in to us.
Yeah, I can imagine. Definitely a good feeling.
Yes.
Thanks for all that, Mayor. And you actually went into our next topic, whether you realized it or not, but which was about real estate and affordable housing. So I appreciate you covering that. I do have a question that came up with some of what you said. You talked about building. It sounded like, and from what you're projecting, there's going to be an initial phase of sped up building process. I don't know exactly what that means. Is there anything else you can tell us? Is there some sort of context that can be put around that to what residents might be able to expect as far as new affordable housing?
Well, the word affordable is really a kind of a misnomer because everyone can afford different levels. My response is attainable. If you can obtain a house or you can attain a unit, what is a condo, townhouse, whatever, then it's really an achievement in your life. And so the county needs to endeavor in fast tracking those obtainable units, affordable rentals. Now that's a little different word, affordable rentals, but it's really two different aspects. We have many people out there. Let me start with our affordable rentals that like renting. They don't want to have the 800-pound gorilla of a mortgage and that commitment. They love renting and they enjoy renting. Some of them, as what I mentioned earlier, was a short-term rentals. When I say short-term, 6 months, 9 months, come here to work and then go back home. And so we need a certain amount of that in our inventory. We need rentals for a lot of people who are just at that point where they're growing their family or they're growing their income and they need to have rental in the beginning to save up to get to the point of purchasing an obtainable unit. And so, those are the reasons why. And finally, the main reason is there are some people that don't want that responsibility, would rather rent than own. So we know, I know people that have done that all their life, and no matter how much money they make, they just never wanted to own. They rather rent. The other side of that is obtainable housing or obtainable units where, and I know we all have different income levels. So the county with a public-private partnership can build units in perpetuity or in long-term leases of the land that people can afford to buy in and build equity so that one day they can either buy their own outside on the open market, but at $1 million at medium price of a home here in Maui County, not many of us, including myself, could afford to buy $1 million house. So we've got to make sure that these affordable units, whether they're housing, condos, townhouses, I don't care what it is, stays in that affordable rental. Affordable ownership, I should say, excuse me, let me correct that. And that way you have a chance not only to build some equity, but to have that feeling of ownership, that's yours, that you take care of it because it belongs to you. And, I've been a homeowner for almost 45 years of my life since I've been married. And it's a nice feeling to know that you're building equity for your future. My wife and I have paid off our house. It's done. It took us 22 years to pay it off, but it's paid off. And today we don't own a dime on the house, and it's an asset in our family. And so when she and I moves on into the next world, if you know what I mean, our children will have something to look forward to. And both my sons and most of my children, my two sons and their children have rentals or have ownership of homes, so they're okay. But it's not easy to get started, and that's why the county has first-time homeowners program, which we give up to $30,000 for down payment and or closing costs or both. We have affordable rentals and we have rental programs that you've seen and heard about that help our people get into homes and they can rent for some years and then build equity and then move on to purchase an obtainable unit. So, but it's the lack of units being built that's been the real challenge. And so that's why right now, we're working on about 500 to 700 units here in Central Maui, and maybe another 200 to 300 units in South Maui, and about 300 units out in West Maui, all to be built over the next 2.5 years. And that of the 5,000 would take, about a third of that need off the books. I'm hoping that also when we clamp down on illegal rentals or illegal short-term rentals, TVRs and all of that, that will bring more housing and more units back into what I call the affordable range for people to purchase. So there's a multitude of things we're working on. And right now, it's really the push is to start getting these off the drawing boards and into reality and start digging dirt to build homes or build units for our people.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I think really helpful for myself, and I'm sure our audience as well. One last question. I'm not a real estate expert. I don't expect you present yourself as one either. We try
No,
our
I'm
best.
not.
But one of the dynamics that seemed to really proven true, especially through the pandemic, is the reality of, you know, a home's for sale on Maui. It's available. It could have been well intended to be, you know, built for a resident, for that matter. But you know, Maui is a beautiful place, to not just the residents, but to really you got this kind of global demand, it seems, you know, and through the pandemic, when people are working from home, you know, can move here from the Bay Area or whatnot, and keep their Bay Area wage, but buy a home here in Maui. And I don't expect that there's necessarily a solution that you see, but is that anything that's a real factor in your viewpoint? And is there anything that could or is being worked on to help ensure that local residents do have these opportunities that you speak of, especially with new developments?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about in perpetuity, you know, that, you know, you would own like Hawaiian homes, you'd own the home itself, the building, but the land would be leased from the county and always belong to the county. So the sales would always have to stay within the affordable range and not be sold like 5 years later, sold for 850,000 when you paid 450,000 or something like that. Yes, you're right. There is a large number of people that love Maui, that want to move here and live here. It's safe. Most people feel very safe here in Maui. Our crime is fairly minimal. I mean, it's not that we have no crime, and we have really a beautiful weather 365 days a year. You couldn't ask for much more. However, they're taking up inventory, and when they move here and live here, it's one thing, but when they move here for investment purposes, that's the other part of it. And that's been really a challenge during the pandemic, because many outside buyers have been buying sight unseen. You know, they buy old homes, new homes, they don't care, and they don't care what the price is. In fact, I was talking to one of my realtor friends, and he says 9 out of 12 homes that he sold have gone for more than the asking price.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, that just tells you that people from the outside, as well as the residents here, are gobbling up anything that's going on the market almost as quickly. You know, in fact, he also told me that most of them don't stay on the market more than 7 to 12 days, maybe 2 weeks, and they're bought up. So it's a crazy time. And part of it is because the lack of inventory. We have not built large tracts of home for many, many years. I think Maui Lani is probably the last. And, you know, if you look at Maui Lani, it's been about 6, 7 years since the last big group was built in the back next to Pomaikai School. You look at Kihei, other than Kinoleo Apartments, Kawaihini Apartments, the A and B development as you first get by North Kihei, when you come off of the highway and you go onto Piilani Highway and you come off of Mokulele Highway or Veterans Highway, whichever one you want to call it. That development, I forget the name of it, was townhouses. That was gobbled up, and now there's nothing left to sell there. But we haven't built big tracts. When I say big tracts, I'm talking 200 to 500 units at a time. You know, we build 8, 10, 12. That's not keeping up with demand. People still having children. People have children that want to live here. Multi-generations are living together, grandma, your father, your mother, and children all living in one house. Part of it, in some degree, is cultural, but then the other side is the unavailability of affordable rentals and obtainable housing. So all of this has really come to a head, and you know, the council and I have, you know, been trying to really work together now over the last 2-3 months to make this happen, to make sure that we can start building and start building soon.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for all that, Mayor. Really, really helpful. Appreciate all the information. That covers the topics I wanted to bring up for our audience to hear your answers to. Appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude?
Well, let's see. I want to thank the Pacific Radio Group for everything they've done throughout this pandemic. You know, they've allowed me a lot of time to speak to the public about different issues, and as well as what was going on with COVID-19. I also want to say that Maui is in a unique situation. We have grown, we have some great opportunities, but like everything else, we have challenges. There's no question about that. Education is better off, but I think you have to get the students back to school. Classrooms are important, that social interaction is important. But this pandemic keeps just kind of hanging around. Every time we think we're over the hump, whoop, another challenge comes up. And so I want the people to understand we're blessed in many ways. We work hard at the challenges we face, but we're one community. We have always learned to work together when the need is then there. So all the division you see out there, all the different groups of people who are not liking each other because you either are vaccinated, not vaccinated, all of that, I say to them, I say to you, I say to all, that let's get together as a community. Let's live in what I call with the mutual respect that is really important. That you and I understand one thing, we're different, but we also have the same common goals, a quality of life that we all deserve, and the opportunity to raise your families here, to be able to enjoy what we've all grown up with, and most importantly, to protect for the future of our children. You've seen what they've been talking about global warming and some of the irreparable harm that the Gulf Stream has now that they feel that they cannot recover. We don't want to continue on that path. We've all got to work together, not only to protect the environment, but to protect what I call the key element of love, aloha, which all of us really have been a part of. I want to say again, mahalo to all of you. God bless you. Stay safe. Ahuiho.